make sure I'm recording. All right. Don't do that. I don't know if I can just shut one. That's all I can do. All day.
I think everyone can do that.
No, they can't. They can't. They cannot. All right, so welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm Shawn, and I am with...
You're with me, Krystal.
Krystal.
Krystal D.
Who is getting ready to go on a journey of her own. That you've already been.
What's that?
That you've already been on, though, but you're getting ready to embark on some different things, right?
Yes, I'm going to be devoted to my own story, my own journey.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm going to tell the journey that I have been on through the experiences of others. I don't know how that's going to work. But
I was just about to ask, like, how does that work? But I like it. I'm going to tell my story through the experience of others.
Yeah.
But there's always elements. Have you ever noticed there's always elements of people's stories that you would resonate with, even if the situations weren't the same ones you went through? Make sense?
Absolutely. So that's how I'm telling my story, I guess.
Because, like, there's this rapper named NF. I don't know if you know who that is.
MF is in mother.
No. NF. N.
Oh, excuse me. I apologize. Okay,
yeah. N. But anyways, and he was like, he kind of started off as a Christian rapper, but he's not really Christian rapper, but he just doesn't cuss and stuff. But anyways, he's got this song that I was listening to today, and it's about his mom who overdosed on pills. And the song is called How Could You Leave Us? And it's just this really emotional, it's like he calls his music therapy, right? So it's like where he's expressing all the anguish that he's going through. But even though that's not my story, there's something that resonated with me as he was sharing his story. Does that make sense? And I was able to connect with him because I've been through experiences that were hurtful or painful. You know what I mean? I've had parental issues, you know. They weren't the same as his, obviously. But I don't know. So as you were saying that, it reminded me that this morning I was like listening to that song and feeling it like really hard.
Well, because I think that thank you very much for basically expanding upon what my journey is going to be about, because we have more in common than not, right?
Yeah.
But we, in my opinion, I think we can use race and gender, location, age, and those are 4 things that clearly we don't have in common. And some people would say that those 4, differences are enough to keep us from coming to the table to just begin the conversation or the journey of figuring out the things that we have in common. So us pushing beyond, or first off acknowledging that, we race, gender, age, geographical location. We can continue to focus and find the differences that we have between us. But those things keep us to think that we can't find the common ground, when if we get together and just begin to share our stories, then you will inevitably share things in my journey that, no, I haven't gone through, but that I can absolutely relate to and have a sister story to share, right? So I just think that those differences make us think that, we can't find a common place to, to begin, when really that's not true at all.
That is, yeah. It is true. It seems like there's a lot of things that could separate us, but at the end of the day, we all have heartbeats, we all have breath in our lungs, and that's one thing that universally connects us. But then, like, as you start to dive into people's experiences, you realize that, like, we're not all alike. So, like, what brings me to my knees isn't going to be what brings you to yours. What makes me cry is not going to be what makes you cry. But at the same time, like, what is real is that we all have that point in our lives that will do that to us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And likewise, not just on the negative side or the difficult side, rather, but also just on the positive side. Like, what makes me happy might not be what makes you happy. What makes me joyful might not be what makes you joyful. But at the same time, we all have that point within us that will create that. You know what I mean? Right. And so that's yet another, like, my experiences are going to be different. Because one of the things, I spent 5 years teaching at a drug rehab. And I did like a class, and my class was like mindset. It was like just all about mindset and like overcoming. It was a Christian rehab. But one of the things that I would tell them, because like offhand, because I mean, I'm 33 now, and I was probably 23 when I was doing this. So they, you know, a lot of these guys were looking at me and was like, man, you don't, like, what do you know? You know what I mean? Like, what do you know about life? Like, you've been a preacher since you was 14. You've been, you know what I mean? It's just like, but then when I would like tell them my story about being homeless, about doing this, about that, like, it began to make them realize that, like, yeah, I might not have the same story as you. And I would even say this, like, look, I might not, I'm not saying what I've been through is any worse than what anyone else has been through, but what I am trying to say is we've all have had dirt on us. Like, we've all had difficult moments. You know what I mean? We all have pain. We all have triumphs. We all have, like, you know, trials. We have all of it. Like, all of us are going to experience those things. And it's not so much what happens to you in life, it's more about how you respond to what happens. Because what happens a lot of times is going to be out of your control. You're not going to be able to, like, forecast everything that happens to you. You know what I mean? That's why I like trying to, whether it's for ourselves or for our children or for anybody, trying to make a bubble makes no sense to me. Because if you try to just create a safe environment or a bubble all the time, eventually that bubble's going to pop and you're going to be faced with the reality that the world isn't a perfect place. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that to be cynical. I'm just saying that to be, it's the reality.
Right.
And I think oftentimes when you're caught off guard by something, when you don't expect it, that's when it hits you the hardest. You know what I mean? But if you're aware that the world's not a perfect place, if you're aware that there will be challenges, if you're aware that there will be difficult moments, when it hits you, it doesn't hit you in a way that was unexpected. You know what I mean? It doesn't take you off guard. And because it doesn't take you off guard, it doesn't derail you. It doesn't keep you away from your purpose. You realize your purpose is greater than that challenge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I agree.
Yeah. Because I think there's been moments in my life where things happened and it was the thing that I wasn't ready for that took me out. You know what I mean?
Did it really take you out?
It didn't. But see, that's the perspective you gain after.
Yeah.
But in the moment, you don't have that perspective. So you feel like it's over. You know what I mean? I don't say it in a way to be cynical, because there is a sense in which you could go too far with it and just walk around thinking life is crappy all the time. You know what I mean? And nothing ever good is going to happen. And you become cynical and you never try to progress because you think, what's the point? That's going too far. But at the same time, I'm naturally optimistic. Like, I just always feel like it's a good day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't worry. And I have the tendency to not take reality into play. You know what I mean? Like, I have a tendency to go the other way where it's just like, everything's good. Well, the reality is that no, like, some things are bad. And you have to understand that they're bad. But then let your optimistic personality, right, like your optimistic viewpoint, then shape that challenge. But if I can't be, I guess what I'm trying to figure out how I want to word it. I'm basically saying I can't say that pain doesn't exist. Like, it does. And if I build a world where I think pain doesn't exist, I'm going to be sadly mistaken one day. You know what I mean? So I have to know it exists, but I also have to know that it does not own me, and it doesn't mean I can't get past it.
Well, yeah, because it's like there is pain, but does it have to be painful? Is there, maybe there's a difference there, you know? Even to say that there's you can have a headache, so there is the existence and presence of pain, but I can also pop a, small white pill to keep that headache from actually the pain of the headache from getting there.
True.
So it's saying that a situation can absolutely not be good, but that doesn't mean that in the presence of that good can't come out of it. It's like COVID, the pandemic, for instance. I mean, we all know there was a lot of sickness, there was a lot of loss from every facet of life, but and I think that unfortunately it's not as talked about as it should be, that there were probably a lot of good, a tremendous amount of good that came out of what we know as the pandemic or the shutdown. I think that there was a lot of good that came out of it. And I think that we as human society, the world doesn't allow us to acknowledge the reality that you can have two things existing in the same place. You've got flowers, as beautiful as they are, that are also growing with weeds. You've got people in hospitals that are fighting for their lives when there's also people that are arriving to give birth to new life. You can have people that have differences as clear as you and I be able to come together and have a meaningful and newfound friendship and conversation. So I think that we sometimes I can focus just on the one side, when I think that life is a lot more multifaceted and as a believer and follower of Jesus, like even going back to the very beginning, I mean, we want to look at the fall of Adam and Eve as though it was not the best decision at all. Okay, could Eve and Adam have just run to Chick-fil-A and got a couple of sandwiches instead of eating the fruit that they were told not to eat? Could they have done that? I don't know if Chick-fil-A was a thing back then, but I'm just saying. But in that, all of the bad that came from it, so much good has come from it as well. So I think it's just acknowledging that there is a possibility that you can have pain, but it doesn't have to be painful, because you can be healed. You can say, okay, this is the diagnosis, this is where I am, but there can also be something good that can come out of it. I think my thing is what allows us to shift that perspective. Like, how do we get out of that place? Because we know people, I think, like us, that can acknowledge the presence of both good and evil, pain and healing, struggle and success all in the same time. The fact that I have this tremendous setback, but it can also set me up for a comeback. It can also propel me into the very place where I really need to go. Like, oh man, I got fired from a job unexpectedly that I had put all of my eggs into, and my career and my success was defined by this particular position, and I thought I was going to be promoted, and they didn't even demote me. They just escorted me out and was like, that we don't need your services anymore. But what if that can put me in position to set me up to actually walk in the destiny and the purpose that I would have never found had I stayed in that comfort zone. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it's just, like I said, that shift, like what gets us to that place to where we can acknowledge the presence and the necessity of both, right? Because didn't we need Eve to eat the daggum apple or mango or pineapple or banana or grape or whatever it was, so that we can get to where all mankind can have a chance at redemption and salvation? If we didn't have people that would unfortunately take on, and struggle and endure, and some who have succumbed to some of these illnesses, then how can we have the presence of those who can take the vaccine or live, and be healed from it. So I don't know. It's a weird dichotomy, but I think there is room for both.
Definitely.
I just jumped off into the deep end there.
Yeah, this isn't your show, but I do appreciate. No, I'm agreeing that's ultimately, I mean, you said it a better way. I like how you said the flower and the weeds, because that is definitely what I'm trying to say is I think you can go too far either way. And I'm huge on this, that life is about balance, right? I don't want to be so focused on just positive that I'm surprised by negative. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times, especially as you mentioned, like Christianity and just faith of any kind, really, but in Christianity specifically, I've heard people, when they're struggling with their faith, it's when they're experiencing the difficult moments in life, right? And they're wondering why they're going through such trials or why they're going through such things. And for them to begin to realize that it's not that your faith has made this happen, and it's not that it hasn't made it happen. You know what I mean? It is the world and how the world operates and how the world works. Like, the world is not perfect, is what I'm trying to say. And so when we begin to like think that everything's going to be sunshine and lollipops, we're going to be disappointed by that. But then if we walk around thinking that the world is nothing but garbage, then what happens is we never actually get to enjoy the roses. You know what I mean? Like, we never actually get to enjoy the flowers. We never actually experience what life actually has to offer. And so I think with the perspective, like you said, with the flower and the weeds, it helps us realize that like both exist. You know what I mean? But what I want to do is let my perspective shape my reality. Does that make sense?
Yes, but you have to be careful, because if you have a faulty reality or perspective, then you're setting yourself up for the rainbows and unicorns or the garbage.
Well
so
I'm agreeing. So
it's also
hey, we both have a lot to say, so I get it. But no, that's what I'm saying though. It's when you realize there's both. So that is where the perspective comes into play. Like a well-shaped perspective to know that rainbows do exist, but so does a dog crap. You know what I mean? Like, both are happening, and you could like step in a pile of dog crap while you're looking at a rainbow. Like, that's the reality. You know what I mean? Like good and bad do exist. And because I realize, like, sometimes the way I view my problem is the real problem.
Facts.
You ever had that?
That's good. That is good.
Yeah. I didn't know you could do that. What is that? All right.
I was giving you a round of applause.
It's just sitting there now. All right, go.
It'll go away.
Okay. I didn't know you could do that. All right. It's your turn.
No, I mean, absolutely. I think about a time in my life where I truly experienced the rock bottom valley. I mean, it was lower than the valley. It was the darkest moment of my life, right? And it truly was. But I can also look at other, I can say that, a boyfriend broke up with me and I was just like in that same situation. But in reality, no, that really wasn't the lowest point. But it's about perspective. It's about, okay, wait a minute. I'm still worthy. And even though I look like, I was going to say something, but I'm not, because one day she may see this podcast and I don't want to, but who you said I look like. But anyway, it's perspective. It's perspective. And even when I truly reached that point, not when the boyfriend broke up with me or, but the moment that I encountered a true downfall, it was a moment where, in that place of darkness and just like, what in the world has happened? Like, how am I going to get out of this? Where I did have a shift. And I can't even say that it came from me, because I don't think in that moment I was strong enough to see beyond and see to the possibility that I can get out of this. But there was a moment where it was like, okay, I have to start shifting some things here. I've got to, open the curtains and just allow some sun to come in. I've got to get up and go outside today. I've got to, like, things just kind of started to push me into a different perspective, because my perspective was truly that this sucks. I'm never going to get out of this. It's always going to be like this. Take me now, Lord. Oh, Evelyn, here I come. Or was it Elizabeth? Or I think it was Elizabeth.
Red Fox?
Yeah. Oh, Elizabeth, I'm coming now. It was that moment. So I'll be honest and say that it wasn't me. I think it was a strength that came beyond, that was beyond me. And that's where I guess my faith will come in to say that it was, it wasn't me. I wasn't the initiator of getting beyond that heartbreak or that setback. So it leads me to wonder, like, don't other people have that? Like, do they just ignore those sudden or subtle whispers that can say you can make it through this?
Well, I think that's where perspective comes from, is the outside influence. Like for you in your situation, like, it was very much a relationship with Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, there was influence coming into your life in the form of perspective from an outside source, meaning it wasn't coming from you yourself. You see what I'm saying? Like, you may have been telling yourself, but the facts and the confidence was coming from an outside source. You know what I mean? The reality of it, the influence of it, the fact that this can get better, the fact that this pain isn't going to last forever, or even if it does, you'll be able to get through it. You know what I mean? Like, all of that perspective and that influence and that inspiration and all of that, it always is going to come from an outside source. I think what we do as people, now some people might not agree with me on this, but I think that what we do as people, though, is that whatever has been being poured into us is what's going to come out of us. Right? So I used to tell people, like, I can't give someone something I don't have. Like, if you were to ask me to give you sugar right now, I don't have any. I don't use sugar at all in my house. There's no need for me to have it, right? Like, it's Craig's house here. I have no sugar. I got Kool-Aid though. But, like, I don't have that. I don't.
You have two things that match.
Yeah, I got milk, no cereal. But my point is that I can't give you something I don't have, right? Nor can I give myself something I don't have. I can only give what I've been receiving. Does that make sense? So, like, what I'm pouring into myself is so important, because that's what's eventually going to come out of me. So you never know when you're going to need that, right? Like, you never know. That's the thing. Like, I was hearing Kevin Hart talk about his motorcycle wreck or some kind of wreck, and he was talking about, like, the doctor, like, when he broke his back and all that, the doctor was like, hey, if you hadn't been doing all the core training that you've been doing, like, for the years that you've been doing it, you would have been snapped in half. But your core was so strong because of all the stuff you've been doing in the gym that, like, it actually saved you. Like, I don't know how that was even possible. So anyways, his point is like, do the work, be in the gym, be healthy, work on your health, because you never know when you're going to have to need it. Like, you never know when you're going to have to tap into that space. And it's the same with life. Like, everything, all your experiences, what you're digesting on a day to day, the people you're interacting with, the people who make your inner circle, like, what those people are adding to your life and what you're adding to their life, like, all of that's playing a part into the person that you're becoming, subconsciously and consciously, right? So when you then experience a trial, or you experience a pain, or you experience success, right? Because we've all heard the horror stories of someone experiencing some success and then going off the deep end, right? Like they lose their mind, they can't handle it. And all of that, whether it's the failures or the success, whether it's the pain or it's the triumph or whatever it is, when you're experiencing that, what's been being poured into you is ultimately going to be how you respond to it.
Yeah, that's true.
I just feel like that's what's going to happen. You know what I mean? I can't give you encouragement if I haven't been encouraged. I can't give you inspiration if I haven't been inspired. Like I can't give someone something I don't have. So if it's not happening within me, it can't happen through me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's and in that space that I was in, I mean, I did lean a lot on my faith, and
it makes sense.
That is what I absolutely think. That's what the subtle whisper and that nudge of hope was, that light that shined in, because I wasn't pouring that in at the time, but I had enough of it in there. It's like you train up a child the way that they should go and they'll never, depart from it. I knew that was a structure, a foundational principle that I had. So I think that obviously I would encourage people to have that foundation, that root in a faith in God, but something else could still point you in that direction, some type of positivity, your inner circle, all those things that you just mentioned, that's I think that's crucial.
I feel like it's all a part of it, all links together. I mean, because like it's the old saying that we refuted when we were kids, you know what I mean? Like your parents would be like, you don't need to be hanging out with those people, and it's like, you'd be like I'm not going to become, you know what I mean? Like it was the idea that we would refute that you'll become who you're around. Mm-hmm. We used to refute that. But the older I get, that's true.
Oh, yeah.
And it might not necessarily be every one of your friends, but it's that inner circle. It's the people that are close enough to you that they're adding something to your life. Now, it might not be what you want, though. And that's where you have to do the inventory. And that's where it gets difficult, because it's hard to cut people out of your life. You know what I mean? And when I say cut them out, I don't mean that you can't be friends with them. I don't mean you have to be rude to them. I just mean that not everyone deserves that access to you, nor do you deserve everyone's access to them. You know what I mean? Like, you have to... Does that make sense? Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Because I mean that's hard.
I don't mean to go here again, but it's appropriate when you talk about your inner circle. I mean, the inner circle of Jesus. I mean, hello, you've got Judas. I mean, oh my goodness, who would? He did intentionally, handpick him, but he needed him at the same time. He needed him to accomplish that job. So I don't, I recently had a conversation with someone in my inner circle, and someone that had been there for a while that I have looked up to, someone a bit older than I am, and maybe even a bit more accomplished, wife, mother, all those things. And, she said some things to me that were in response to me sharing a plan, a goal that I'm working towards. And it wasn't anything, in my opinion, like major. It's not like, hey, I'm going to pick up and move to the other side of the country, or I'm going to leave my family and just go and, do it. It wasn't anything. It was just, hey, this is an idea that I have and I want to pursue it. And she was immediately vocal in her disapproval and her concern of me doing that. It was just very negative, and I just let her have her moment. And then, the conversation ended. She responded within, maybe 30 minutes. She reached back out to me and apologized for the negativity and the things that she said and all of that. And, so the past few weeks, I've been going back and forth with, okay, do I now remove her from my inner circle? Well, first off, I need to respond to her because she has been reaching out to me, and I'm trying to process again, like, how does this work? Because I had a good idea. It's nothing negative. It's something positive. I'm working towards a goal, right? Isn't that what we want to do? I think that's, aligning in my purpose and gifting and talent. Like, I've got the education for it, the background. Like, this seems to be the next step in the progressive chain. And here she is, just like, no, we need to try again. You need to maybe redirect and go elsewhere. And so here I have a good idea, and I've got a seed now or a weed that's growing up with that rose. And so it's like, okay, all right, what gets plucked out first? Do I water the rose to allow it to continue to grow and thrive? Or do I water the weed? Do I pluck it out? So I think that, it's relevant. The whole topic of discussion here to me just made me think about that encounter, because it was the presence of both the good and the evil. And then when you go to your inner circle, it's like, okay, do I allow her to stay? Do I, how do you address that negativity?
Yeah, I think that's the word I would use too, like that negativity, because I love the illustration of the rose once again, because oftentimes what happens is people have the dream, right? And we'll call that the rose. But then, or the flower of some sort, I don't know. But you got the flower, right? The daisy.
We'll take roses, because I actually have several of them growing in my front yard, so we'll say roses.
But roses have thorns, so it's good and bad.
They do, and I was going to bring that up. You stole my punchline. They do, because even when I'm pulling out the weed and saying that, okay, she's not going to be in my inner circle anymore, and I'm going to continue to just water this rose. Every time I go out there, I admire the beauty of my rose bushes, but I also have to know, okay, they die off, and I'm going to have to clip them. And then in doing so, I've got to be very careful, because I can and have often been, stuck by the thorns. So, and remember, so the rose, for our example's sake, is the success, is the goal, is the dream. That's the focus. But even in that comes the rose, the thorns, comes the pruning process, comes even the season when, like, they just die off and they're just in the front of my house just looking a hot mess because they're out of season. So again, we've got the rose, it's got its own problems, and on top of that, we've got the weeds that are growing in there with it. So it's two sets of craziness that's going on.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking, was like, you got the flower, you got the rose, that's the dream. But anytime a dream is planted, like you said, there's going to be negativity around that. I've said it before. I think some of the people who love you the most are going to give you the worst advice. I think I was telling you that before. Like, some of the people who are the closest to you, some of the people who may very well care about you a lot, will oftentimes give you the worst advice, because they give you advice based on how they view their life. You know what I mean? Or they give you advice based on wanting the best for you. So they don't want any potential of struggle, they don't want any potential of risk, they don't want any potential of failure. You know what I mean? They just want to create the safest environment because they love you and they don't want to see you struggle, right? But what happens with that is now you never accomplish the thing that you was put on this earth to accomplish. You know what I mean? You're never fulfilled in the way that you're really meant to be fulfilled. And so while you may have this safe life, you don't have anything that you've ever really connected with deeply in this life, and we don't know when that's going to end. You know what I mean? So I would rather not play it safe. But anyways, digress. So, but then you talk about the weeds. Anytime a dream is sowed, there's going to be negativity that's going to be attached to it. And this is the crucial part. This is what connected with me as you were saying this. What are we going to pluck out of the ground? Are we going to pluck the dream and say, all right, well, yeah, it's stupid. Pluck it out and throw it away and just let that weed grow? Because now you plant a new dream, that weed is already monstrous. Because you've never plucked it out. And you've already given it ground over your dream. So what do you think is going to happen to the next rose? Or the next? You're just going to keep plucking the roses out, because now the weeds have overtaken the whole garden. You see what I'm saying? Because you've never plucked out the negativity. You've never removed it. And because you haven't removed it, every time you listen to it, that's in you. That's in your mind now. It's in your mind. So now every time you have a new one, you run it by them, they shoot it down. It just gets more and more. So like, I think that everyone's going to have to come to a point in their life if they're going to pursue what it is that they feel like they were put on this earth to do, they're going to have to get past that negativity. And it's difficult because even if you go to pull the weeds, I mean, if the weeds is real close to the rose, what's going to happen? You're going to get stuck by the thorns on the rose, right? Like, I mean, you're going to have to get in there and do the work to remove it. And it's not always easy and it's not always pleasant, but it's definitely always worth it. And I don't think that means that we have to be like hateful to the people, you know, especially because sometimes it's our family that does that. You know what I mean? So it doesn't mean that we don't have to love them or care about them, but what it does mean is that we're going to believe our voice before we believe theirs. You know what I mean? Like, I was telling someone this the other day, and we may have talked about it too, but someone was telling me that they were being told that they couldn't do something. And I was telling them, I said, you know who gives power to what they say?
We do.
When we believe it.
Yeah.
If we don't believe it, I'm not saying it's not shitty. I'm not saying that it doesn't hurt. I'm not saying that it's not okay. I'm just saying when someone says something negative, right? Even if it's wrapped in love, when they say something negative, the only person who truly gives it power is us. And the power is in our belief. And so I was telling them, like, look, I know that's what they believe. They say you can't do it, but what do you believe? Because what you believe is what you'll do. That's what you'll do. That's what you'll become. That's who you will be, is what you believe about yourself. So if you're looking at your life right now and you don't like the way it looks, you have to change your belief in you. Not your belief like in faith, but I'm talking about how you view yourself, the belief of you, what you believe to be true about you, right? Like how you view yourself, how you see yourself. If you don't see yourself as someone who can accomplish, right, then you won't. If you see yourself as someone who can, then you will, right? You have to shape the way you view yourself. And ultimately, like you were saying, where does that viewpoint come from? Well, oftentimes it comes from something greater than ourselves, right? So now how I view myself is through a lens that aligns with my purpose. So if someone comes in talking some crazy shit that doesn't align with that, I don't even let that go into my ears because I know that not to be true about me.
Well,
you know what I mean? I know that right. Not to be
and
who I am.
I agree with you, but right. I did listen enough to, you can hear something, but you don't necessarily have to listen or receive it. It's that whole goes in one ear and out the other, but it did at least come in and go through a very quick process of knowing that, that needs to be expelled. You're going to have to keep going. You can't stay here. And then also, as you were talking, I was thinking about this particular thing for me was something that I knew was a thought that had to keep moving out to the other side because it was in direct contrary to, as I said, my gifts, my talents, my desires from like way back before I even knew this person, my education, my career choices. I mean, it's just a natural progression. But there are, because I know her, I also have to speak to the fact that I know that the same limitations or concerns or doubt that she was projecting onto me were things that she herself has experienced in her own life. So that goes to, again, being careful who we allow to speak into our lives, but also recognizing, like, again, what we said at the very, very beginning of this, there are differences that you and I have that could have said, oh, well, he doesn't know what it's like to be a woman, a Black woman, he's not a mom, he's not married, he's not this, he's not that. And then that would have kept us from realizing that, whoa, we're actually like probably related in some weird way, but we have to entertain it enough to, like, because maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe there are some harsh realities that I need to hear from her, from someone that's close to me that does love me, But I don't necessarily have to sit on it and say, okay, well, you're the end all be all. I guess I'm just going to stop and not move forward. But I listened to what she said enough to consider it, but not allow it to keep me from moving forward.
And that's the key. Factual based, not emotionalized.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's when we emotionalize it, when we believe it to be true about us. You know what I mean? When we emotionalize failure, rejection, negativity, whatever it is, because I'm like, how you get that perspective, how you shape that perspective, how you look differently at life is, like you said, you see the purpose in the pain. Right? Well, you can't see the purpose in the pain if you don't take a step back and quit being in your feelings about the pain, right? Because when you're in your feelings, you're just hurt, right? So you're not able to process and see it. Sometimes you have to step back, right? Sometimes you have to realize the way you view your problem is the problem. Sometimes you have to see the purpose in the pain, right? And how you do that is you start to look at the facts of what's going on, right? Like not just the emotional feeling. And what I'm talking about is specifically the emotional feeling of like the hurt or the pain attached to it, right? And so, yeah, like if I fail, I want to know I failed, but I'm not going to stay there very long, right? Like I just want to know that I did, and then I'm going to keep it moving. I don't... No emotional.
But it is a process, though.
It's hard to do that, but
it is a process. I didn't, the period in my life that I referred to earlier. I mean, I celebrated 3 years yesterday of the initial shock of like, oh my goodness, it has hit the fan, and I wish I could say that the 3 years. There was I had to walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Like it was a process that involved acknowledging that, oh man, this is not a rainbows unicorn type of situation. Like this hurts, this sucks, this is hard, I'm sad, I don't like being here. And so I think that before you can get to getting out of it, you've got to first acknowledge that you're there. And I don't know that that's always a process that people want to immediately face. And it took a while.
Yeah.
And again, I think that moment where it was like, some would say that aha moment, or that light kind of shined in to say, okay, here is the exit plan. Here is the escape route that you need to take.
Yeah.
And whenever you are ready, whenever you make the decision, yes, it is. Yes, you're sad. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it hurts. Yes. But this is what you need to do to get there. And it was hard, and it was dark, and it was difficult, and all those things. But I had to first acknowledge that I felt that way, instead of just painting over it to seem as though it wasn't what it really was. And maybe that was almost like this premature or weird way to warn me in my what my friend did by saying, hey, this might not be the best decision, this might not be, because others will feel that way, right? Others aren't going to support it. So I think there, but again, I didn't want to stay there. I didn't like where I was. And I had to allow just a little bit of a light to shine in and say it doesn't have to stay this way.
Yeah, exactly.
I just have to acknowledge that I don't like it, and acknowledge that I can actually start making some steps towards changing it. And it was easier than I thought it would be. I think it was just once I shifted my perspective, it was a lot easier to move on than I thought it would be.
Yeah, perspective is huge, because that when you have that mindset change of knowing that it's possible, because oftentimes when we're going through something, because it's all levels, right? Like when I was saying, like, I don't emotionalize the failure, I'm talking about on a micro level of like, I'm trying my business and then it fails, it goes bust, and then it bankrupts or whatever, and then I have to restart. Like that's okay, it's a failure, but let's keep going. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to internalize that. When we're talking about bigger things that affect us, like with our life or whatever, you know, those are going to be a little bit harder to navigate through. You know what I mean? But I think that perspective, once again, comes into play because oftentimes the reason why, like you said it really well earlier when you said, like, I thought I had experienced pain until I experienced this. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes when we're going through pain, we think it's the worst thing ever, right? And then when we're going through pain, we oftentimes think it's never going to leave, right? Like, we're thinking it's going to be this way forever, and we're thinking it's the worst thing ever. And then we're thinking we're alone in it, right? Like, so there's all these, like, things that are happening when we're experiencing deep-rooted pain. We're thinking it's the worst thing ever. We're thinking it's never going to stop. And we're thinking we're the only ones that know what this is like, right? But then if we could just look around and see other people who have been through similar things and have gotten through it, it's possible. It's possible for you to get through this, right? If you feel like you're never going to get through it, you probably are not going to, you know, because you're defeated. Unless something steps in, right? Like, unless that aha moment happens, that light bulb, that move of God, whatever it is, unless that happens, you're going to walk in defeat, right? But you have to know that it's possible to get through and pass, because sometimes we don't get past it, we just get through it. And what I mean is that not every pain that we're stricken with goes away. Sometimes it's a pain we deal with for the rest of our lives, but we get through it. So sometimes you don't get over it or
and
pass.
You know what?
You just get through.
Yeah, there absolutely are thorns that we can wish we could just pluck out and never have to deal with again. But I think it adds character, caution, personality.
And what else does it add?
What's that?
Perspective. It adds perspective.
Yeah.
I'm going to quote it, you know, Paul, right?
Yeah.
I'm thankful because now when I'm weak, I'm strong. I understand His grace is sufficient. It's the idea that, like, it was without the pain, he would have never knew that. Would have never experienced the depth of it, right? Because he says
full circle. Because without the eating of the, you know, the tangerine, we wouldn't know the good that's on the other side. So again, it goes back to you know, you will have both. It's just which you're choosing to focus on.
And how you're choosing to view it too, though. Because what I love about that illustration or that story from the Bible is when he's telling us about it, he says, look, I have this ailment, this thorn, he calls it. He's never specific about what it is, but people have their ideas. But anyways, he says, I got this, right? And then he says, I prayed 3 times. All right? At this point, if people follow along in the Bible and you read about Paul, it was saying that people were standing like in his shadows. All right? So, like, he was close to God, okay? So much that people were wanting his sweat rags and wanting to stand in his shadow just because they knew he was so close to God that, like, if you're around this dude, God stuff's going to happen, right? So if this guy, who's that close to God, prays 3 times and the answer is no, and people don't like that because you think when you pray, the answer is going to be yes. But his answer was no. Remove this from me. No, not going to do it. Why am I not going to do it? Because you're going to get perspective that you wouldn't be able to have without it. That's why. It's going to change the way you walk in this life. It's going to change the way you react in this life. It's going to change the way you think about this life because it's not going away. It's the endurance. Yeah. It's the journey. It's the perspective that you're going to gain in it. Because you're going to get to see me in a different light. You're going to see me in a different light because you're going to have to depend on me in a different way. So, perspective. It's not always easy to obtain. but it's definitely needed. Because, I think I heard this, I can't remember where I heard this at, but it's a good illustration too. So I'll end it with this. There's this guy, I don't even know where I heard this, but it's so good, but he said, this guy worked for Nike, right? And Nike was wanting to expand into India. And so they send the guy over there to India, and he comes back and he says, yeah, it's not a good market. It's like, it's not a good market because no one wears shoes over there. Right? Well, they send another guy. He comes back and he says, the market is through the roof over in India because no one has shoes yet. Same situation, just two different perspectives. One person looked at no shoes being established over there. I don't even know if this is a true story, but it's like one of those folk tales. But anyways.
Okay, because now I'm wondering. I'm like, okay, what happened? I mean, have they taken over the market? Or
yeah,
are they wearing
I don't know.
over there?
Yeah, I don't know. But the point is that one's going to look at the fact that there's no shoes there as a negative thing. The other guy's looking at it as a positive because we have no competition. We put out shoes, everyone can buy them because there's no competition. So it's the idea of what is your perspective? What are you going to look at life at? That's why I was saying sometimes my problem is the real problem. I'll give you one more. You're bringing it out, Krystal. You're bringing it out. All right. So, guy goes to the doctor.
I'll send you an invoice.
Not funny. All right. So, guy goes to the doctor, right? And he's complaining that like his body is just broken. He's like, I don't know what it is, but I'm just broken, head to toe. I'm broke. And the doctor's like, what do you mean? Like, that's not possible. Like, you have pain all over. And he's like, yeah. Every single bit of my body hurts, and I don't know what's going on. So they're running some tests, they're doing some things. The doctor's just doing a simple evaluation because all the tests come back. So he comes back in the office, he's like, all right, well, we're going to try one last test. And he's like, have you not figured out why, like, I hurt all over? And he's like, no, all the tests are coming back negative. There's no cancer, there's no, I don't know. Let's do one more test. So he just asks the guy, he says, touch your forehead for me. Touches his forehead, screams in pain. He says, all right, touch your nose for me. Touches his nose, screams in pain. He says, all right, touch your shoulder for me. So he touches his shoulder, screams in pain. He's crying at this point. He's like, why are you making me do this? I told you I hurt all over. You won't believe me. And he's like, all right. Touch your elbow. So he touches his elbow, screaming in pain. He's like, all right, touch your stomach. He touches his stomach, screaming in pain. Touch kneecap, screaming. Works down to the ankle, touch your ankle, screaming. And he's in tears. He's hunkered over. He's just like, I told you I hurt all over. Doctor says, give me your hand. Gives him his hand. And he grabs his finger and he pulls on it really hard. And the guy screams out and he goes, your finger was dislocated. You thought everything in the world was wrong, but in reality, the thing that was wrong was minute. You know what I mean? So sometimes the way we view our problem is the real problem.
I mean, that was good.
I just love a little clap.
Okay, fine. You seem not to like my clap. So there you go.
It's just
Is that better?
Oh, how do you even do that?
Aha.
Oh, well, I'm on my computer. You're probably on a phone.
No, actually, I'm on my computer. See? It's the way you're viewing this, the way you are viewing this situation.
What happened here?
Shawn, I just don't know if you're as cool as me, buddy. You might just have to leave it at that, okay? Just accept it as what it is.
All right. But anyways.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. All right. So, well, thank you for joining me today. And, yeah, I like it. I think this conversation was inspiring. So, that's the point of it.
I think so. I got something out of it.
Yeah, so we'll be looking forward to seeing your journey, Krystal, and what you do with the rose that has been planted.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Right back at you.
All righty. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
This has been Inspired Conversations. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you for having me, Shawn.
Absolutely.
Wait, am I